Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. We're 10 years on from the financial crash. What's the landscape like now for investment and how has it evolved during that decade?
I think it's, clearly we've had an incredible run in markets, and in some ways it's only been the very recent period that has felt remotely like people actually felt we were having a recovery at all. For a long time it was earnings growth wasn't that great and people were generally being disappointed by economic numbers. And in some ways it's almost it's felt like a very reluctant recovery, and that means it will probably go on for longer than it would have done otherwise. I think regulation has clearly had a significant impact in how we all have to do business, and it's really noticeable that the growth in particularly within banks has been in the compliance and the regulatory teams and the legal teams, and there are signs that maybe that's going to start easing back again, but whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, if I'm honest.
With all of that in mind, what do you think are the key challenges at the moment for the industry and what they're facing in the very immediate future?
So I think there are two really. One is delivering the returns that investors are going to expect and pension funds and DC members need to keep them secure in retirement. And then the other one is really about for us as the financial industry, keeping the trust and confidence of our investees, because we don't always do a great job for them. There is a lot of noise about how much gets taken out in fees, and that we as an industry seem to do well irrespective of whether or not the end beneficiary does well. So building that transparency, building the confidence that we are in it for our members, for our asset owners, I think is really important.
Do you think this industry actually has a responsibility to do that and create prosperity?
I personally do. I think we call ourselves a profession, and if we are going to call ourselves a profession, I think we have an obligation to do the best we can for our clients. If we were a doctor or a surgeon and we weren't looking after our patients, we would get struck off, and yet that doesn't or hasn't typically been what's happened in the financial industry.
You think there needs to be more accountability?
I think there needs to be more accountability and more transparency, and I think that comes all the way into letting the asset owner, the ultimate beneficiary, understand the investment process much better than they do at the moment, because we can't control outcomes, we can't control share prices and market returns. The FCA would string us up if we did. But the bit we can control is the process that leads to the decision to buy, sell or hold. And if we can share that with our clients, and they can get confidence that we're doing the same thing over and over again, and that on average it leads to a good outcome, they should have confidence to stick with us even when times aren't so good.
Where do you think the industry is currently in terms of reputation with the end user?
I haven't seen the survey recently, but I did see one a couple of years ago that said that we were down below estate agents and lawyers, so not great.
And you'd like to see that change, presumably?
I think we have to. I mean, at the end of the day, as I say, we do call ourselves a profession. We do get paid extremely well for what we do, and I think the onus is on us to do the best that we can for our clients.
And do you think the end users that we're talking about there are becoming more savvy too and more demanding because they have access and transparency in everything else they do in life?
Yeah, so my situation is probably a bit different in that I'm working for a pension fund rather than the retail client. But certainly if I look at the quality of my board and my trustees, the kind of questions I am being asked now and the kind of scrutiny I get placed under now is an order of magnitude different and more professional than it was 15 years ago.
And do you think that's a result of things having gone disastrously wrong 10 years ago?
I think it's a natural progression, and I think certainly for pension funds, we are a lot bigger than we used to be, and when you are looking after 60 billion of someone's assets, and when you have a deficit, as the vast majority of pension funds do at the moment, there is a certain amount of rigour and professionalism that's needed so that people trust that you are doing the right thing.
What would you like to see happen next, and what do you hope a conference like this sort of facilitates in terms of conversations that happen, perhaps collaboration that happens?
So I actually haven't been to this conference for a very long time, so I'm looking forward to seeing how things have moved on and to hearing from other people about particularly the sustainability side of things. There's a lot of talk about ESG integration and the need to act sustainably, and I'm very curious as to what degree that goes beyond the nice headline marketing pitch and whether there actually is any substance behind that.
And do you think ESG and impact investing, as it's called, is something that the end users care more about now too?
Certainly within our USS demographic, we've always had a very active member base. So we set up a responsible investment team back in the I think it was the late 90s, in response to member pressure to divest or to have a screening policy.
Presumably you were quite unusual to be doing that then.
I think we were the first within the UK to do that, and we still have one of the largest teams acting in that capacity. I think we're also unusual in that the RI team are very much integrated into our process. They report to me from an exco perspective, but they are active across all our asset classes, public and private, and they're part of our enhanced due diligence process on virtually everything we do. So it's not just a box ticking exercise. We do genuinely try and make sure that we're acting as responsible owners and stewards of capital.
And do you anticipate seeing that across more companies and not just your fund?
I'm told that it is an increasingly frequent question that turns up on RFP requests for fund managers, and if you don't have credentials in that area, again I am told that asset managers are finding it hard to get appointed. So yes, I think it's good news. It seems to be here to stay.
Now obviously you're here for a panel, but you're also presumably hoping to take away some ideas and inspiration. What do you expect to be having in terms of conversations this week?
Well, I've already had a few quite interesting conversations. I've only been here about 20 minutes, so there's a particularly good panel just ahead of the one I'm on demographics, which I think is going to be really, really interesting. And obviously getting Nick Clegg's views from the political standpoint on how the world has evolved after the GFC, and he will probably have some quite interesting views on where we go next. The political landscape is pretty tumultuous at the moment, and getting some insights from an insider or a former insider would be quite useful.
Well, enjoy your time here, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.